I thank the Majority Leader for his impassioned remarks today, and all of us weep for those servicemen and women who have lost their lives in defense of our great nation. And I would note that this Senate can right now, today, move to correct the problem that the Majority Leader described. The House of Representatives has passed 8 separate bills funding vital priorities of the government. All 8 of those bills now sit on the Majority Leader's desk. This Senate has not voted on those bills. To date, the Majority Leader has not allowed the United States Senate even to have a vote on the bills that would fund vital government functions. One of those bills is a bill that funds the VA, funds the Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, Mr. President, it seems to me we're going to have political differences, and those political differences are not going away anytime soon. But we ought to be able to say, regardless of what happens in the battle over the shutdown, our veterans should be beyond politics. We should have bipartisan agreement. Let's stand for our veterans. Right now, veterans' disability payments are not funded. The House has passed legislation to fund it, and it was bipartisan legislation with a number of Democratic votes in the House, and yet the Majority Leader has not allowed the United States Senate to vote on it. The only thing in the way of funding the VA today is the Senate voting to do so, is the objection that the Majority Leader has raised to funding the VA. And let me note, the bill that the House passed funding the VA is a clean CR on the VA. It doesn't mention Obamacare, doesn't say a word about Obamacare, simply says our veterans should be beyond partisan politics, regardless of the shutdown. And Mr. President, let me note, this body has engaged in bipartisan cooperation already. Earlier in the course of this debate, the House of Representatives passed a bill to fund the men and women of the military, to pay their paychecks. Now, for weeks, there had been politicians suggesting that if there were a government shutdown, the men and women of the military would not be paid. The House passed a bill, a clean CR, that said we will fund the men and women of the military. And let me commend my friends on the Democratic side of the aisle. Let me commend the Majority Leader, because the 54 Democrats in this body made the right decision to act in a bipartisan way and cooperate with the Republicans in this body and with the House of Representatives, and in 24 hours, the bill funding the men and women of our military became law, went to the President, and was signed into law. That's the way it's supposed to operate. But, Mr. President, let me ask, if we could work together in a bipartisan manner to say we're not going to hold the men and women of the military hostage, why can't we work together in a bipartisan manner to say we're not going to hold our veterans hostage, that regardless of what happens in the shutdown, let's fund the VA now? Likewise, the House of Representatives has passed a bill funding our parks and national memorials. We have seen day after day World War II veterans coming to the World War II memorial and facing barricades that the administration has put up, that the administration has expended money to keep them out. The House has passed a bill to fund our parks and our memorials. Mr. President, let me suggest, if the Senate would only vote, we could open every park and memorial in the country. The House has passed a bill to fund FEMA. If the Senate would only vote, FEMA could be funded. The House has passed a bill to fund the National Institutes of Health so that we can provide vital cancer research. The Majority Leader spoke quite passionately just moments ago about the need to fund the National Institutes of Health. I agree with the Majority Leader. And I would ask the Majority Leader to withdraw the objection he has raised to funding the NIH. Now, let me note, some have disparaged the House's approach as a, quote, piecemeal approach. Mr. President, let me note that is the traditional means of appropriating and legislating that for centuries this body has done. The VA is usually funded, just the VA, not connected to anything else. Why would the Senate want to hold veterans hostage because of disagreements over Obamacare? I don't think we should. I think we should fund the VA right now. Why would the Senate want to hold our parks and memorials hostage? Why would the Senate want to hold the National Institute of Health hostage Why would the Senate want to hold federal workers hostage? On Saturday, the House of Representatives unanimously passed a bill to provide back pay for federal workers who've been furloughed. Let me note, every House Democrat who voted in favor of that, and yet the majority leader has not allowed this body to vote. I'm going to say right now, I agree with those House Democrats, and let me urge the Senate Democrats, stand with your House Democrats who voted unanimously in favor of back pay for federal workers. We can work together with bipartisan compromise, but we can only do so if both sides come to the table. Right now, the House of Representatives is working constructively to fund vital priorities, and unfortunately, President Obama, the majority leader and Senate Democrats are refusing to negotiate, refusing to compromise. That's not a reasonable approach. It's not a path that will lead to resolving this. And so I hope we come together, resolve this, fund our vital priorities, and at the same time, respond to the millions of people who are hurting because of Obamacare, who are losing their jobs, who are pushed into part-time work, who are facing skyrocketing insurance premiums, and who are losing their health insurance. We need to answer the call of our constituents. We need to answer the call of Teamsters President James Hoffa, who put in writing that Obamacare right now is destroying the health care of millions of working men and women. Destroying is the word Mr. Hoffa used. I think the United States Senate should respond to the concern Mr. Hoffa raised, and we should stand with millions of working men and women. We should protect their health care so that the hundreds of millions of Americans who have health care right now don't lose it. All of the people across this country are getting letters in the mail saying, you are losing your health care because of Obamacare. We need to listen to them. So let's fund our government, let's fund our vital priorities, and let's listen to the American people and stop the #1 job killer in this country, that is Obamacare. Mr. President, I urge that this body work together in a bipartisan manner to listen to the American people. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.